Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's a beautiful autumn day outside, isn't it? What? Yes, it is. Cool. Hey, we are having a lot of fun. We're in a series called Unpopular Opinion. We just heard an unpopular opinion from Emma about coffee, right? I'm just saying. We're looking at these statements that Jesus makes. Matthew, in this section of the gospel we're looking at, Matthew was a man who was called out by God, was mentored by Jesus, changed his career, left his home, did whatever he needed to do to go follow God. And then he wrote what we call a gospel, the story of Jesus. Now, we're in the section of Matthew where he lists a bunch of statements that Jesus is making, and in the day, they were very unpopular. Today, in churches, we love them, but when Jesus said them, they were not popular. Either they were unpopular, and we have unpopular opinions all the time, right? We have an unpopular opinion about who is the greatest of all time, right? Not in New England, just the rest of the country is wrong. You know what I'm saying? We have unpopular opinions about autumn-flavored coffee choices. And you know what? It's okay, because I know that the younger generation will catch up with the older generation about what really is true coffee, right? Coffee tastes like coffee, and pumpkin belongs in a pie. Just keep that. Yeah, all right. We also have very unpopular opinions when it comes to discussion about who has the most cutest grandchild. I'm sorry, I'm on the platform. It's me, all right? That's my grandson, and yes, he is the cutest grandchild everywhere. I just made a very unpopular declaration. I had an unpopular, that's okay. I can live with that because he's just that cute. Unpopular opinions. We're going to look at some today in a passage. Now, here's the thing. What we're talking about today, favorite passage in Matthew. Matter of fact, this passage in Matthew that we're going to talk about today was life-transforming to me, like fresh air flowing through me into my soul at a point where I desperately needed it. So this is what we're going to do this morning. I'm going to talk about yokes. I don't mean the type that comes out of an egg, okay? We're going to talk about how it can be really exhausting to pursue God. And then I want to talk about a couple of moments in my life where I really needed rest and how God supplied it. Does that sound okay? Well, why don't I pray? God, I just want to thank you that I got this opportunity this morning. I love Jesus. I love following him. I love studying his teachings. I love telling other people about Jesus Christ. God, I just want the world to look at Jesus the way I do and to discover him, not as a historical figure, but as a living person. Please bless us this morning. Use my voice for your purposes. Amen. So if you want, you can open up your Bible app. You can open up your book. We're in Matthew. We were in Matthew for a while now. We're going to be in Matthew for a long time, so just come prepared. We're in what's called chapter 11. Somebody at one point in history took all the books in the Bible, broke them up into chapters. That's the big numbers. Put little numbers in the sentences. We call those verses. And it's really there just to help navigate us to specific places because the Bible is so big, right? So here we are in Matthew 11, verse 25. We're going to go all the way to 28. At that time, Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you are pleased to do. And you got to look at, there are cues in the gospel that kind of helps you understand it and interpret it. Matthew gives us a cue in the very beginning at this time. It connects us to last week when we talked about people who had a crisis of faith. We talked about John, who gave his whole life to serve God. And tremendous sacrifice. Felt he had this destiny. Ended up in prison. And now he's like, God, where are you? Jesus, are you sure you're the one? That's a crisis of faith. And then Jesus talked about people who didn't know they were having a crisis of faith, or maybe they did and didn't want to admit it, because God was trying to do something in their lives, and they were fighting God over it, running from him and avoiding him and arguing with him and didn't want anything to do with God. That was kind of their crisis of faith, personally. And it's at that time that Jesus is going to say now what he's about to say. And he's comparing, he's using what I call metaphor. He's taking two different groups of people as symbols, not literal necessarily. The wise and the learned, the little children. You guys get to be the little children, which is good this morning. You guys get to be the wise and learned, which, well, and everyone in between, you get to figure it out for yourself, all right? The wise and the learned. I think this is a symbol for all the people who have been arguing for Jesus. They're Bible scholars. They were professional in their ministry. They had dedicated themselves to religious rituals and spiritual practices. Everybody went to them. They were wise and learned. They were so wise and learned that their goal was to memorize everything that we call the Old Testament. That's a lot of memorization, right? And then to teach it to other people. They were the professionals. Little children weren't that. Doesn't mean they didn't know the Bible. I think what little children mean are the people who have come to Jesus because they needed something and they didn't fully understand who Jesus was or what Jesus was about. As a matter of fact, they were okay with that. They just needed help. They were willing to take a risk, a step of faith that Jesus would do something for them that they couldn't do for themselves. They needed God and they went to Jesus even though they didn't fully figure it all out. They were willing to do that. You know what the wise and learned do? The wise and learned aren't willing to take a step until they figure it all out. I've seen wise and learned throughout the years. Now I'm a guy, I've got, all my family has been to college, right? Some of us are got graduate degrees or pursuing graduate degrees. So I love education, I love learning, I love reading, read the Bible, study the Bible, go to the original language, all that stuff. But there's a warning that Jesus is giving about intellectual pride. And I've seen it manifested. I've seen it in seminaries with professors who speak with an arrogance as though they are right about it all. Or I've seen it in faith groups, the person who kind of dominates the discussion, can't be wrong, has to correct everybody. There's a little bit of a, well, someday you'll think like me attitude that comes out from it, right? And they just got it all wrapped up. But you know what I thought? I thought this for a long time. Everyone is imperfect, right? I mean, what do we say all the time? Well, nobody's perfect. You know that we're saying everyone is imperfect. But God, by definition, is perfect, right? So if everyone is imperfect, God is perfect, here's what I honestly believe this: the imperfect cannot fully understand the perfect. By definition, the imperfect cannot fully understand the perfect. Now, here's what happens. Little kids are okay with that. Because children have learned to live with wonder and mystery, and they can be wrong, and they're trying to figure things out, and, they'll take direction. Some I know, talking about, we don't know my kid and how stubborn he is. I'm just talking about in general. There's a wonder and a mystery to life because they know they don't understand everything, and they want to learn more. That's the attitude Jesus is talking about. The wise and the learned, I just fried your brain circuits. You think like, what? Can't fully understand God? That's what I'm trying to do. I want to understand and know God. Great. You're never going to fully get there because he's perfect and you're not. A matter of fact, and I don't mean to insult you, and there may be smoke coming out some ears, here's what I'm thinking. I think everyone is wrong somewhere when it comes to God. Everyone is wrong somewhere when it comes to God. I said that to somebody who just stopped speaking to me. Couldn't grasp that concept. And Jesus says there's a warning there. And now he's going to go on to say something that's going to be really big, right? Because little children are drawn to God. And by that, what Jesus is saying, people who are willing to take a risk, even though they don't fully understand it, they don't truly get it all, but they know that there's God in Jesus, and I'm going to take that step. I don't have to have it all figured out. God is calling you. And Jesus is going to speak to you this morning. To the intellectual, Jesus is going to challenge you. Because Jesus says this thing. Now, here's what I think. Super unpopular opinion. It was for saying things like this that Jesus got crucified. Because Jesus goes on to say, my Father has given me all things. Right? No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to tell. And Jesus is saying, my relationship with God is completely unique. No one has a relationship with God like I do. And God when he says God's given me all things, he's talking like to kids and to the learned. I do know it all because the Father has given that to me. And because of this relationship with God, including the knowledge that God has shared with me, I'm willing to give it to you. But you're not going to find it outside of me. Super unpopular opinion in Jesus' day. Jesus is claiming something that the people of their day felt no human had a right to say, and get angry enough at Jesus that they're going to be willing to kill him for it. Now from that, he goes on, I want you to hold on to that. I'm not going to go deep into that just yet. I just want you to hold on to that idea. Jesus then says, so come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. I'll give you rest. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. You're just tired and you are wiped out. You're sick of pursuing God because you feel like you never get there. You never feel satisfied. You just never feel, you're always wrestling with guilt and with shame or frustration, and honestly, pursuing God has just worn you out. I'll give you rest. Come to me, everybody, in life. You feel like you're on a treadmill and somebody keeps bumping up the speed and you're running fast and you're afraid you're going to fall off and get hurt. Jesus says, I'll give you rest. Come to me with all the struggles you're carrying, all the burdens you're carrying, all the hurts and the pain and the confusion and that makes it hard to sleep at night, or you get out of bed in the morning and go through the day tired and exhausted and depressed and angry or anxious. I'll give you rest. Come to me, all who are coming out of a pandemic. And you thought to yourself, I learned all those lessons I'm never going to forget. All those things that God did when he slowed down the world. And he didn't slow it down for everybody, but for everyone for whom it did slow down, I want to remember this, and I want to go back to the rat race, and I'm going to change, and things are going to be different now, and here we are, you're right back where you were. He says, I'll give you rest. Come to me, everybody who just killed it during the pandemic. Working day, working night, working weekends. You're first responders, you're delivery, you're education, and you're just medical, you're just going, and you were so exhausted you just cried some nights. I'll give you rest. Come to me, everybody who's afraid to die. You're sick, it's not going to change. It's going to take your life. I will give you rest. It's pretty powerful. Is Jesus saying, come to me and all you who are weak and who are weary and burdened, I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. So Jesus is talking about something different. He's not talking about just a good nap. Jesus is saying, I want to give you a rest that will be deep into your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And here's the thing. This has always been God's desire for humanity. Always. In the Bible that Jesus studied, what we call the Old Testament, God gave this promise to a people who were literally war-torn, displaced, refugees, seeing their land burn, their people killed, their children taken from them. And God said, I will give rest and strength to those who are weak and tired. This is God's desire, no matter what the circumstances of your life, no matter where you are in the world, no matter how rich or poor you are, or whatever's going on, God's desire is for us to have rest, which is a big word. Because like I said, it's not just a rest of kind of like getting a good night's sleep or going on a vacation and coming back re-energized and recharged. It's bigger than that to God. This is because God once said this to a group of people. He had freed them from slavery, brought them out of a war, provided salvation from an army that wanted to destroy them, did a miraculous deliverance, and as they're getting ready to become a new nation, a new people with a new identity, God said, the Lord replied to their leader, a guy named Moses, my presence will go with you, and I'll give you rest. The and word actually is a connecting thought. Because my presence will go with you, you'll find rest. But it's a type of rest of like, guys, you've been slaves. But I'm going to give you a new identity, a new purpose, a new direction. It's not that life won't be hard. It says there's going to be some type of rest that only comes with God's presence. That's the type of rest that I want to give to you. And you're going to be different because of it. And then again, through that person, Jeremiah, that I just talked about a little minute ago, the Lord says, stand at the crossroads and look. He's talking to a people who are struggling with what God is doing in the world, and they're trying to find God and figure things out, and the religious system wasn't helping them, right? This is what the Lord says, stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient path. Ask where the good way is. Walk in it. And look at what he says. Does this sound familiar? You'll find rest for your souls. You understand what Jesus is doing here? Jesus is connecting dots for us. Because to the people in Jeremiah's world, he's like, man, you have wandered through to this new thing that you think is everything. But it's not the ancient path. In other words, this is how I would describe it. God is saying, this is not the operating system that I built. I built an operating system. It's in the very beginning of our story in the Bible of harmony with the world and in harmony with God and harmony with one another. There's rest. The world working as it's supposed to be, and you have this internal peace, this settled nature to your soul that comes when you're walking by the operating system that I've designed. Because this one has got a bunch of bugs in it, but I'm cleaning it up. And so here's what I think that Jesus is saying. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. I'm going to give you that soul rest that you so desperately needed. That settledness to your soul that can face trials and sufferings and difficulties and confusion and broken relationships, and you can have a peace that settles your soul. So yeah, you know what? You will sleep better at night. Because Jesus slept on a boat in the middle of a storm. Because he was at rest with the Father. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. What he means by yoke, you know, their Bible, in the core of it, there was something called the law. You know, maybe you've heard of the 10 Commandments. And there was a whole code that they developed to guide their nation. They called that the law. It was the structure, like the Constitution to their nation. And they called it a yoke in Jesus' day. Because a yoke guided the beast. Right? And so Jesus says, but take my yoke upon you, because my yoke is different. My lifestyle, my view of God, the way I see the world, the truth that I know and that I live by, and my practices and my relational skills and my commitments, my ambitions, my goals, all of that, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Jesus says, you know what? At the core, I'm gentle. I'm humble. I'm not oppressive. I'm not here to beat you down, push you down. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm a gentle, humble guide. He goes, and you're going to find that rest for your soul that Jeremiah promised. How? He says, for my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Why? Because God's presence in Jesus will give you rest. I think he's bringing together all these thoughts. How do you find that rest? From God's presence and living life by the ancient way, the way it was designed and meant to be. And Jesus is saying in the midst of this, God's presence in me and my true understanding of the operating system to life, you come to me and you're going to find rest for your souls. It's an amazing thing. Here's a real amazing thing. It's not hard to lose that rest, even when you think you found it, right? So I was, a little pastor revelation. Some of it you'll know about me. I was at a period in my life years ago where I didn't have that rest, and I was preaching every Sunday. I was like on a treadmill. There was always more to do, always more people to talk to. There was always more decisions to make, and I was up to ministry, right up to my elbows. Right? I felt like I was in the flood of decisions, and I was going through a difficult time in my personal life, and so all these things would come crashing in together, and I was waking up exhausted, didn't have time to pray, didn't have time to read the Bible except to get together a sermon and throwing it all together and putting out fires left and right. And then you know what happens when you get caught in this, right? You start to feel guilty. I'm avoiding God. I'm not with God. You start to lose, what happens? You get angry. You get impatient. You're not kind. You're not gentle. You're not exhibiting the characteristics of God that he was called you. Because what is the Holy Spirit's come to give you? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. And when you're not rested, you're the opposite of all those things, right? And then you start to feel shame. So now your body's tired, your mind is clouded, and in your heart you're feeling shame and guilt. And I'm standing up and I'm telling everyone about God. Tell me I didn't feel like I was a hypocrite. And I had just tapped out. But the church was really kind. They gave me this rest period. They said, it calls it a sabbatical. It's off the word Sabbath, which is a word for rest. Take a few months and just kind of like pull it together. You're in a bad shape when your family looks like, oh, you're going to be home for 3 months. I'm going to be staying at my friend's house. And when your co-workers are like, go enjoy yourself, right? Like, all right. And I still remember this moment. I knew I just had to, I got to crack open the Bible again, and I got to get back into prayer. But I was like a runner who had just fallen off the wagon and had gone in the worst direction possible physically. And what I needed was a basic couch to 5K app. That's how I felt. So I pulled off what I thought was a cheesy little devotional book. I'm just going to read this, right? And it led me to this passage. This is what the sovereign Lord, the Holy One of Israel, says. Only in returning to me and resting in me will you be saved. It's like, okay. Sometimes God speaks really clear through the Bible, which is why a lot of people avoid it. And then in quietness and confidence is your strength. And I was not quiet. Internally, I was a storm. Externally, I kept myself busy so I didn't have to deal with it. And I had no confidence anymore. But you would have none of it. You said, no one will get our help. No, we'll go get our help from Egypt. They'll give us swift horses to ride in the battle. But the only swiftness you're going to see is the swiftness of your enemies chasing you. Let me tell you what that means. What that means is like God is saying, you're in a bad situation. I'm the only place you're going to get help, but you're going to figure it out on yourself, aren't you? And now listen, these things are really good. You're going to go read another book. You're going to go to a therapist. You're going to try to, get your act together, and you're going to do it all on your own, aren't you? You're like a nation at war that I can give victory, but you're going to go make a diplomatic relationship with another country because you like their weapons better. And you think you're going to solve this problem. I was reading all this, and I was like, oh, here we go. Here comes the hammer. And he says, one of them will chase 1,000 of you. 5 of them will make all of you flee. It's like you're on the battlefield. And you know what? One of their soldiers will chase out 1,000 of yours because you're trying to deal with it on your own. And this struck me. You will be left like a lonely flagpole on a hill or a tattered banner on a distant mountaintop. And that's what I felt like. Tattered and alone, distant from God and from people. And I thought, no, here comes the hammer. And this. So the Lord must wait for you to come to him. Why? So he can show you his love and compassion. For the Lord is a faithful God, and blessed are those who wait for his help. That is not what I expected. It's crazy that you can get to this place in your life because you're going full tilt. You're not even thinking about what you're thinking, right? And I'm thinking, man, God is going to hammer it. I feel guilty. I feel ashamed. God is going to come down on me, and I'm going to have to face it. And you feel like a kid who's really messed up, totaled the car because you're being irresponsible, trashed the house, got fired for doing something stupid, and now you got to go face your parents, and they're just going to give it to you. And instead, what God offers is love and compassion. God's like, you're that tattered banner on a distant mountaintop, and I'm just waiting for you to come down. And it's like God was just saying, you know what? Are you done? Are you done trying to figure it out, solve it all? Are you willing to just come back to me? And yeah, there was a bunch of practices I re-energized myself with. Learning to sit in the quiet, just learning to listen to the Bible speak to me, journaling what I was thinking and what I felt God was saying to me, reconnecting in relationships and not avoiding them, listening to the ways that I had hurt people and disappointed them, and just sitting in that tension with them and just saying, truly, I was sorry. And just dedicating myself to getting healthy again, physically and mentally and emotionally, and finding people that I trusted who were wise or who were kind and devoted, and sharing my heart with them, like a faith group, or like my John 17:23 group of pastors, and being honest and authentic with them, not hiding and putting on the facade. And slowly I found rest. The rest I found wasn't just sleeping better at night, because I still had struggles and ministry problems and things in life. It was a settledness of the soul that kept the feeling like we can do this. And the we was important. We can do this. And then, this honestly living in that, then the pandemic struck. And that was okay. Because for me, I was able to find peace in God. I remember in August of last year, I really felt God say to me, redeem the time. And so I told the staff to do that. We're going to slow down August. We're just going to focus on your vacation, get some rest, spend some time with God. It's a beautiful thing to do. Make sure you connect with the Lord. And it was wonderful. January 2021. After I'd been diagnosed with a blood clot in my legs, some in my chest, after I'd gone through double pneumonia, I was sitting in a doctor's office after an uncomfortable biopsy, and he looked at me and he says, he goes, on a scale of 1 to 10, your prostate cancer is a 7. Well, that's not a race I want to win. And having him look at me and say, we need to move on this. He said, lots of people will just take time to see it goes. He goes, you're too young for it to be this high. It's not good, and we need to have surgery. Okay. 2 months later, on my 58th birthday, I walked into St. Vincent's Hospital, and I had surgery. Happy birthday! Right? And then we come out of that, successful surgery, follow-up blood test, phone call from the doctor. He goes, hey, I'm really sorry to have to tell you this. We did not cure you. He said, your PSA count is high enough. I need now to release you to Dana-Farber. Here's some recommendations. And there's nothing like sitting in a doctor's office with your wife, and the doctor says, we have a 30 to 50% chance of curing you. And then, what's the natural question? And what? He says, and we'll make you as comfortable and as healthy for as long as we possibly can, because we'll commit ourselves to you. I remember walking out, and I remember moments. I was angry, I was confused, I cried, I yelled at God, I didn't understand what was going on. I'm 58 years old, I thought I had so much more time. And you know what? I would eventually got through the fog after God just kind of like a father just letting me rage. And then when you're exhausted, this is what I felt he said. Why are you surprised by your mortality? Why are you surprised? You committed your life to a career, a calling of helping people die. How many funerals and memorials have you conducted? How many times have you talked with somebody who came to you and they had a terminal illness and trying to figure out what God was doing in their lives? Do you remember the moments when you were in the room and you saw the last breath that person took? Helped the family say goodbye? And now you're surprised? Everybody dies. Here's the secret that we forget in the stories in the Gospels. The people that Jesus brought back to life died again. Everybody dies. Why should you be surprised with that? And then the other thought came. So that became a journey of, okay, what am I going to do now? This happened. No wonder my heart is glad and I rejoice. My body rests in safety, for you will not leave my soul among the dead or allow your Holy One to rot in the grave. You will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasure of living with you. Say it with me, forever. Yeah, you know. God said, why are you surprised by your mortality? Why you're not inspired by your immortality? Because when you can see and accept your mortality, and you can find in God and through Jesus that connection with God of life, you know what happens? You become inspired by your immortality. And that is true rest. Because you know, when you go in the graves, what do you see on all these headstones? Rest in peace. And you know what we think that means? That means, okay, their body is still and now they're forever sleeping. They're dead in the ground. That's peace? That is not what God means. Rest in peace means rest now with a peace that will go beyond the grave into eternity, where all suffering and crying and tears and everything that is all the disease and all that gets wiped away, and you now live with the operating system, all the bugs removed, in God's presence, the life that God has designed, and it's all there now for you. And now rest today, because you know that forever you will rest in peace with God. And so Jesus says, come to me. And when you read this passage, and I'm telling you, read it this week and sit in it for a while. You know, did you get all of the pronouns? Come to me, all you who are weak and heavy laden. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Learn from me, because I am gentle and humble, and you'll find rest for your souls. Do you get all the pronouns? Jesus, if you bring it on, Jesus, like, it isn't a religious system. It isn't a list of ideas. It isn't the spiritual practices. It isn't the rituals. It isn't the community. All those things are good and important, but it starts by coming to Jesus Christ, because God is present in Jesus unlike any other person who has ever lived. And the rest that Jesus offers is because Jesus is offering us the reconnection to God for the operating system of life as it was always meant to be. Come to me, Jesus is saying. Come to me. But here's the thing. In New England, we don't like to do things like that. So Jesus honestly was saying, he was telling the people, come to me. And there are moments right in time where Jesus says that to you, and you feel like what I just said struck your heart and your mind and your soul differently. Because maybe you have had that commitment to Christ, but you're not feeling the rest. You've been on the treadmill, you've messed up your life, your relationships are broken, something is going on, and you have lost that rest. Come to me. Maybe you've had something in your life and you've experienced death, someone that was lost, and you're not sleeping and you're unsettled because you don't know where they are, what's going on with you, or what your future's be. Jesus says, come to me. Maybe you got a terminal illness. Maybe you're living with a shadow of something that's just going to be with you for days and years, and maybe all the way to the end. And you don't know what's going to happen when you die. You know, Jesus says, come to me. So this morning we're going to give you an opportunity to come to Jesus. There should be prayer ministers here, and I invite you to come up with me as I come down off the platform. We'll do a little bit more worship. Here's something, a bold decision this morning. Why don't you come to Jesus? Physically stand up and walk forward. If you need prayer, we'll be there to pray with you. To restart your relationship with Christ or to start it, we'll just be there to pray with you. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Let's do that this morning.